Thank you, Joyce. So first, as we look at HR practices, we want to dig into talent management and performance management, a practice that spans the manager and HR. So first theme that we heard from our companies here is that leaders need to be true leaders and not just process experts. Some companies did note that they were reevaluating talent pipelines to give employees a path to promotion that doesn't force them into management roles that they might be uninterested in or potentially not ready for yet. Additionally, manager playbooks and guides have been given to managers to help them more clearly navigate gray areas. And lastly, we'll talk more about accountability in a bit, but part of that is incorporating the how of performance reviews into how they're coming into the office or how frequently they're coming into the office. Moving into the benefits and rewards. So as we've talked, childcare or caregiving in general has been an opportunity for some of these populations. So some organizations have offered childcare and elder care resources to support these individuals, as well as reimbursements have been another theme to give people a similar experience, whether they're working from home or in office, and more importantly, helping with the ergonomics related concerns that to decrease potential injuries. Moving into compliance, so with the work anywhere policies, some companies did note a ear towards the legality implications of that could potentially be coming down the pipe from the legislation perspective. And additionally, a perceived fairness on the policy application, as Joyce mentioned, but as we said, the companies that did have a policy grounded in the role seem to have a little bit easier of a time navigating that. Moving into engagement and inclusion, so bringing people together for those moments that matter is really important, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Also leaning in and in some cases revamping the affinity groups and mentorship programs to ensure that they're beneficial for all employees regardless of work location, and then planning regular in-person events and thinking beyond what is normal and thinking what employees truly want and what they'll value out of those experiences. So digging into engagement, belonging, and connection, this slide highlights suggestions from our companies, but also through our research, the themes that we identified. One theme that we did notice is that this seems to be a responsibility of managers more than ever before. Specifically, organizations should be empowering managers to start now and not wait for the organization to roll out a program or a guidebook or anything, and instead let managers do what they think their employees would value. One really simple solution is for employees to update their work location on whatever instant messaging system your company utilizes so that their peers know that day whether or not you can find them in office or maybe you need to give them a call if you need something. One suggestion we really liked was the idea of hosting inclusive meetings. So hosting meetings to be either all in person or all remote so that there's no disparate impact of people that are maybe missing out on conversations that happen before a meeting starts or after a meeting ends. Additionally, this helps with the informal chatting time before the meeting to minimize that so that no employees feel that they're missing out on a connection just because they don't work in that location. However, if you do have a remote meeting, you could schedule time at the beginning of the meeting to give people time to chat about non-work related things and just catch up on their life events prior to the meeting starting. Moving into similar non-work related chats, you could also create non-work related chats in the instant messaging system for specific topics or hobbies that people might be interested in, where they can find common ground among their peers. Potentially this is regarding sports or pets, or maybe they're foodies, whatever the thing is that your employees care about, just creating a way for them to collaborate and discuss that to create bonds. Moving into performance management. So as we mentioned, accountability was a theme that we heard from companies. Some companies find it challenging to enforce these flexible work models and ensure that people are coming into the office for those collaboration and moments that matter that we'll talk about. So one way that they're doing that is incorporating in-office time into the how of the performance review, specifically noting that this is how they contribute to the company's culture. Another way some companies are doing it is through self-accountability, giving employees an automated email or otherwise that tells them how often they're coming into the office so they're able to monitor themselves. themselves. This then reinforces our next theme of trust and accountability. So pre-pandemic, potentially managers could walk around an office and see who was there, what time they got there, when they were leaving, maybe even look over their shoulder and see what they're up to. Not that any of those are best practices when it comes to people management. However, in these hybrid work models, it's really not possible for managers to be doing that. Instead, managers need to focus a lot more on managing for the employees' outcomes as opposed to managing for their inputs. Proximity bias is another key component of the performance management systems as people are working dispersed. Research supports that 55% of in-person employees are receiving feedback multiple times a week compared to 42% of fully remote peers. Additionally, pre-COVID research indicated that remote employees' promotion rates were reduced by as much as 50%. This is especially important when you think about the relation to different demographic preferences regarding flexible work. Specifically, according to a 2022 study, white employees were much likely to be returning to the office earlier than the people of color by a margin as much as 17 percentage points. Female employees are also 1.5 times more likely than their male counterparts to prioritize flexibility, specifically as it relates to staying at their current company. Leaders in HR need to ensure that there's no proximity bias at play when evaluating talent. Lastly, communication. So it's really important through these flexible working models that there is a clear line of sight of how employees contribute to the overall business goals, and that managers are setting really clear expectations for how their team members are going to be evaluated. Moving into the moments that matter, I'm sure we've all heard this terminology before, but what exactly does it mean? So first of all, it's really important to note that the moments that matter are different for everybody. Some people might think a moment that matter is a big life event, such as a wedding, a birthday, maybe a specific holiday, where other people think the moments that matter are maybe everyday activities, such as picking their kids up from the school bus. Regardless of what the moments that matter are for employees, managers really need to be in tune to be sure that they understand the moments that matter for the individuals. Further, when it comes to moments that matter, organizations need to be cultivating weak ties that are currently being lost. Weak ties are defined as colleagues that you don't work directly with, but you might still have a workplace relationship with. Employees are currently interacting once a week or less with their weak ties compared to several times a week before the pandemic. Organizations need to be mindful to help employees maintain these weak ties, and we've established a couple of suggestions through our interviews and our research of how to help with that. So the first being to have some level of standardization of the in-office days. Some companies we spoke with were doing this at an organization level. Other companies were doing it based on the team's perspective. Other companies had a hybrid approach. Whatever the mix is, just so that employees are coming in and they're able to collaborate and work among their peers. And this isn't to say there needs to be a minimum of in-office days a week for our fully flexible companies that we spoke with, but just so that there is some level of standardization so people can come together for those events. Moving on to the fostering employee connection, managers can do this in really simple ways, such as coffee hours or regular huddles, or potentially even just establishing a time and a place for everyone to get together to eat their lunch. And lastly, strategically scheduling meetings to minimize the virtual meetings on in-person days so that there's the maximum amount of time for collaboration. One simple suggestion would be leaders potentially holding virtual one-on-ones on days that they're at home and in-person one-on-ones on the days that they're in office, or potentially for consistency, maybe leaders will hold all of their one-on-ones remote so that everyone gets the same treatment. Regardless of what the strategy is, team members and leaders both just need to be really strategic when they're scheduling meetings to maximize that in-office time.